We're going to be talking today about another one of the great golden era British wrestlers. To some, probably the most famous name of all time.
My mum knows the names of 3 wrestlers. One is Hulk Hogan, the other one is Big Daddy, and the third is Mick McManus.
Mick McManus, that's right. The man you loved to hate, he used to bill himself as. It's an interesting one, Mick McManus, and I've slightly held back from doing him for the simple reason that there isn't really the footage of his proper glory years available. That's because he was very old.
Yeah.
By the time...
He started in 1947.
He did, born in 1920.
Yeah.
So when World War II rolled round, Mick was in his early 20s. There is footage of him on YouTube, but it tends to be from that period of World of Sport that has been saved. So it's matches really from the early 70s onwards.
Yeah.
By which point, I think the first one that we watched today, I think he's 54.
Yeah, he's 5'6", and he is 12 and a half stone.
Yeah.
That's have the best
in the
physique
50s. That made you a unit. You know, they had never seen. He's 5'6" and 12 and a half. How do you do that?
He could shift some fucking barrels. I'll tell you what.
Everyone here has got rickets. This lad is a powerhouse, a keg. He was the first great TV wrestler in British history. And previously, when he'd been working the halls and things, he was viewed as being too small to be a main eventer. But the one thing that television did was it made size less important, and it made personality king. And he appeared first on TV in 1955. He would go on for more than 20 years without a decisive loss. And he's believed to have been the person who wrestled more on television than any other British wrestler. Right. Very much watching him now, there is a lot about him that feels like a lost Britain. Just his look. He looks like a lot of different British things, right? he looks a bit like Bob Hoskins in The Long Good Friday.
Yeah, good, nice, like it.
He looks like a butcher who could get you chops off coupon.
Yeah.
He looks like a head docker who has access to stolen pineapples. A spiv who will sell you stockings during the blackout.
Yeah.
He looks like the boss of a potato haulage firm. A trade union leader who, upon retirement, is found out to be corrupt. Your nan's fancy man.
Yeah.
Who used to come down in his Morgan from his flat in Bournemouth every weekend.
All men who would wear a Rolex well.
Yes,
I think,
exactly.
in the 70s.
Mick McManus is as English as tuppence. There is something about him that he is a vanished man of the likes that you used to see all the time in Britain. If somebody had said there's been an industrial accident, then Mick McManus would look like the chief of the fire brigade. He would look like the man who owned the factory. Yeah. He would look like the accountant who was killed.
The man walking the dog past the atrocious accident.
Yes,
the television newsreader.
There's definitely something in being John Malkovich that I would like to see it done with Mick McManus, where there are a million Mick McManuses in a grey industrial Britain. He was born in Camberwell in London in 1920. His real name was William Matthews.
Right.
He's not a real McManus.
Right.
No. He actually changed his name to Mick McManus in 1965. He'd used it in wrestling in the late 50s, early 60s. And I think it was because it just rolled off the tongue really nicely. There was nothing more to it than that. You could tell that obviously the wrestlers thought it was a good name, because the match we're going to see him in against is against Mick McMichael.
Yes. It's like kind of like life imitating art a little bit. It's
a funny thing in a business like that, where you've got this massive star called Mick McManus, and then you have a bloke called Mick McMichael. That, to me, suggested a certain amount of people going, they might think it's Mick McManus, and then they'll buy their ticket. And they can't do anything because you've got a passport that says Mick McMichael on it. I had to look at where he was born. He was born in 12 Kemp's Head Road in Camberwell. That was heavily bombed during World War II, at which point Mick was a fully grown adult, and it was all knocked down, and it's now what is Burgess Park in Camberwell. So you cannot go and pay
Mick
homage.
McManus's house, right?
No, he's so old that his house was destroyed during the war.
During the war, did he fight in the war? Presumably he was of conscription age.
He had left school at 16, and he began working at a printer's in Holborn. And what was key about that was he did drawing and printing. And when he would later transition into wrestling, he would use all those skills, and he was the man who put together all of the posters and the bills.
Right, okay.
So he had a lot of connections. Yeah, of course he did. He's a man who looks like he just has nothing but connections. And when the war came along, he he, like all wrestlers, so few wrestlers seem to have seen active duty.
Yes, they all just hit. Well, transient lifestyle, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, where's Mick gone? He's not in the conscription office radius. He's moved to another one.
You'd know doctors. Doctor, I've got 2 tickets that I've printed myself for my match. Is there any chance that you could say that I'm colourblind? Because I do have trouble seeing the colours. Mick McManus ends up becoming a physical trainer during the war, and he taught legitimate wrestling skills to the RAF. I imagine as you're flying over Dresden, you need that sort of thing. There is something funny about that, because when I was watching the matches that we watch, he does wrestle in a way that wrestling isn't a spectacle, but it's
very
the
functional
art of subduing someone and just stopping it, squishing it down. While he was working for the RAF, he had his professional debut in Australia in 1945. I mean, how was your war, Mick? Yeah, but all right. Yeah. Quite a bit of in Australia. Beautiful country. Right, okay. See a lot of action? Well, I made my professional debut. So during the 50s, McManus becomes something of a star. He wins the British welterweight title in 57, the middleweight championship in 67, and then the middleweight title in 68 and 71. So all that period, he is a big headlining star. But what really made him a star was not really his in-ring performance, and it wasn't really, obviously his size. It was the character that he adopted. The journalist Alan Hubbard, in an obituary, described his persona as the ultimate anti-hero, the cunning, snivelling cheat whose dastardly disregard for the rules, such as they were, became compulsive viewing for some 20 years. One of the first wrestlers who the fans really sort of seemed to generate nicknames for. They called him the man we love to hate, the Dulwich Destroyer, and Mr. Nasty. Excellent name. He had a couple of things. One of the things that he did was he did not like to have his head messed with.
Yes, for obvious reasons.
For obvious reasons. But he used to shout, not the ears, ref, the ears, the ears.
Yes, that was the big thing. And I think in every match I've seen him wrestle, somebody gets hold of his ears. So everybody knows that that's part of his gimmick. You got to get his ears.
Son, if it ain't broke, don't fix
Grab
it.
His ears.
That's what they come to see. He's also got his hairstyle, which oddly, it does become positively bizarre by the end. But even in the early days, people were very much like, he looks like Count Dracula or Emperor Nero. And
it's just kind of the ultimate heel haircut, because it's basically saying, I know this isn't real. Yes. You know this isn't real.
Yeah.
This colour is not... So his big thing is, his hair is pitch black.
It is.
Even from the day he dies, at 93, inexplicably, so late in the day for a wrestler.
So late in the day.
To his early years, he just had pitch black boot polish hair.
Darker than dark. It is blacker than black. It's the blackest thing that's ever been invented.
It's that Vanta black that artist did to upset another artist. I think he resembles from afar. When it gets a bit longer, he starts to look like a Chinese singer in a Hong Kong hotel.
Yes,
in the Peninsula Hotel.
Yeah.
In like the 80s or something.
It really does.
It starts to sort of open up a bit.
It's sort of oddly repellent without being sort of dirty or sordid.
No.
You do just look at it and you just go, you ridiculous
ridiculous man. There was a man, the UK's fattest man TV show, quite famous in the 90s, and this bloke had made this, and he was incredibly fat, and he was very fat and he couldn't move, but he was just kind of like fat older fella who was like, yeah, all right, well, I'll just keep eating until I don't care if I pass away, I'm just a big fat man, that's kind of what I am. And he was quite proud of the fact that he was the UK's fattest man. But he'd made this kind of weird sort of Chairman Mao kind of like hair out of what looked like boot polish, his actual hair, and maybe electrical tape. And whenever, I think his name was David, but whenever it was sort of go, you want to ask about the hair, don't you? And they go, well, what is the hair all about? He goes, it's David's creation. It's David's creation. I think it was David, but like, it's David's creation. And it looks like that. It's like, Mick McManus it's Mick's creation.
I'll just say it's Jack's creation. Jack likes it. It's Jack's lived with it all this time, and it suits me. And then understood and said, "Oh well, that'll do us," and that's it.
Imagine being Britain's second fattest man. What a pathetic person
I think he was also on the show, and he was a younger lad. So he'd made it by his 20s. So, he was on a journey. But it was very 90s, and it was very...
I suppose if you're the second fattest man, if you're younger, I mean, you don't have to wait long until you're the fattest
Exactly.
Exactly. What chance have I got of getting that off you, Jack?
No, I don't think so, no.
One of the sort of knocks against Mick McManus, he was a headliner for a very, very long time. Do you have any idea why he was a headliner for such a long time?
I mean, much like Dusty Rhodes, he probably had some hand in being involved in the booking.
That's exactly right. So I found a really good quote from Lou Thez, and Lou Thez was a very no-nonsense wrestler, seen as being one of the great hard men of all time. And he said, the key to a successful match is to get the fans involved. The winner wasn't always the wrestler whose hand was raised, but the one whose performance stuck out in the minds of the fans as they headed home after the matches. Right. The one they would pay money to see again. And Mick McManus was certainly that character. People genuinely hated him in a way that when you watch his stuff now, you cannot understand why they hate him so much. It just, we've lost that moment where Mick McManus was the most hated man of all time.
Yeah.
And now you watch it and you just sort of go, I mean, the fans really hate him, but he doesn't seem to be doing anything different from any other wrestler would today.
Well, a lot of faces would do sort of Healy, stop it kind of moves as well.
Yeah.
So it was kind of mixed around.
It's a strange thing where I think, culturally wrestling has come on so far, and because we lack that early footage of McManus, it is difficult to be able to go why he was such a trailblazer. But the reality is, someone like Mick McManus only gets there by changing the game entirely. So that's clearly what he was doing in the 60s. What also happened, of course, is he was in a position where he could help himself. So throughout his career, he was also the booker for Dale Martin, who were the largest of the promotions that worked in the South, and they were part of the cartel of nationwide promoters who were under the joint promotions banner. Right. And that gave Mick McManus a huge amount of power, not just for his own career, but for everybody else as well. Yeah. He was booking at points up to 8 different shows a day around the country, working out who's going over and who's not. So he becomes incredibly powerful. So powerful, he gives himself certain privileges. One is that his match is always the second bout, so that he could get home and didn't have to drive too long in the dark.
Yeah.
He also didn't have to drive at all because he had his own driver. And you think what British wrestling was like, to have your own driver is quite an amazing power move.
It'll be you and Daddy, but for Daddy it would be very much a functional situation.
He usually had a fellow performer, someone who would be on the show's opening bout, so a young talent, and they would become Mick's driver. So they would go out, do their match, Mick does his, then it's back in the car and you can drive him home. Why is the question? Why? How did Mick McManus get to that position? And the answer to that is not really known. One of the big rumours is that Mick McManus was a grass, and that there'd been a number of wrestlers who were planning to leave joint promotions to set up with the independent promoter Paul Lincoln. These wrestlers included Mike Marino, who's a big headliner, and one Judo Al Hayes.
Oh,
yeah, they were planning to move, and apparently Mick had gone into the office of the Dale Martin promoter Les Martin, and he had said, "They're all going. They're all going to have. They've got a plot to leave you, and they're gonna leave." And that was, according to Adrian Street in his book as well, he confirms it, the moment that Mick was rewarded by becoming the booker.
Right.
Now, there is one little question that hangs over this. It's only because I know so much about Lord Alfred Hayes. Lord Alfred Hayes, one of his children, Mick McManus was the godfather of.
Right.
So it seems, time-wise, that it's unusual that McManus would be made the godfather of a man who basically he ratted out.
Yeah.
So no one is quite sure. What happens is that Mick McManus then secures himself that main event status for years. He might not otherwise have got it. Certainly not for so long, but he certainly deserved it because the public were mad for Mick McManus. They wanted to see him get his comeuppance, and they would come back week after week after week in the hope that it would happen. Mick McManus himself said, "The public are the ultimate judges of a wrestler's popularity. If they want to see you, you go on and are in demand. If they don't, it doesn't matter how good you might be technically or anything else, you don't get the same reaction or success." And by his own criteria, Mick McManus more than fulfilled that. There was never a point where people didn't want to see him get beaten.
Ladies and gentlemen, the referee has stopped the contest in favour of Mick McManus. Ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately, Robbie Barron has hurt his leg, and I'm sure everyone here will give a very big round of applause for him. Robbie Barron is taking the easy way out. Ladies and gentlemen, I would have thought that Robbie Barron was winning before he did that injury.
Exactly.
The reactions that he got were just off the scale, and it's hard to imagine these days anything like it. I mean, Chatham in Kent, he had a match that the spectators were so angry about him cheating that Joint Promotion invited them to submit formal witness statements into a supposed official hearing they were going to have into the bout. And his most famous rival, of which there is very, very little footage, his most famous rival was with Jackie Pallo, Mr. TV Jackie Pallo. They were two villains, and they clashed verbally on the Eamon Andrews show in the early 60s. Very much a sort of Letterman, Lawler and Kaufman UK version. And then they had matches which were broadcast on ITV before the 62 and 63 FA Cup finals. The last one of those supposedly saw 16 million people tune in to see Pallo versus McManus. And that was more than stayed then for the FA Cup final. Right. They had countless rematches all across the country throughout the 60s. They did the Royal Albert Hall, where the demand for tickets was so great, they tripled the price and still sold out.
You can sort of see why at that period of time wrestling would be such a safer bet than something like boxing, because boxers take time to recover. Yeah. And if you like, wrestlers can just go night after night after night in every corner of the UK.
Not just one show a day. When the going is good, you can milk that good cow. You know? And people, you know, like McManus and Pallo, they were incredible in that they made so much money with each other, and classically they loathed each other. Behind the scenes, they had a long feud, and it really culminated in the early 80s when Jackie Pallo wrote a book called You Grunt and I'll Groan, where he exposed professional wrestling, which McManus really sort of, you know, I think he had a slight triumphant sort of, I told you all these years.
Yeah, he's a wrong one.
Yeah, but Pallo, I think, felt as well that, you know, obviously McManus was still the booker, and Pallo felt that he was the bigger star, but McManus was threatened by him, so would never quite give him the due that he needed. McManus also didn't get on with Les Kellett. No one quite knows why, other than the fact that Kellett is absolutely chilling.
Someone said it had a great therapeutic value too as well, wrestling, because you know, they could see in me maybe the traffic warden who gave him a parking ticket, the income tax inspector, the works foreman, the moaning brother-in-law or something like that, and they could really give vent to their feelings, and it was a great, you know, a relief, if you like, for them, great relieving of tension.
I didn't say some of the fights were fixed. I didn't say that. I said they're fixed. Not some of them. You get my grift.